think that the most important thing to understand with this is that you have lead titles, which are the ones that publishers will splash advertising over, will do hundreds of events, will send their authors on tours and all the rest of it. And then you have everything else. And that is midlist. There is no bottom list. There is no arse list. There is nothing below midlist. Midlist is a continuum that stretches off over an event horizon towards nothingness without ever actually reaching zero. Basically, midlist is everything that is not a lead title. And that can encompass an enormous range from books that you have heard of and seen in every bookshop you've been into, but don't necessarily receive quite the same amount of promotion, to books that you see absolutely nothing of and do not know exist, but are also published by the very same publishers, with the very same editors, with the very same publicity machine that is simply not turned on.
What is up, everybody? You're listening to episode 171 of SFF Addicts. I'm your host, Adrian M. Gibson, and welcome to your weekly dive into the world of science fiction, fantasy, and writing craft. Joining me this week are my two co-hosts, Greta and MJ. We'll start with MJ first, the Chewie to my Han Solo, the Joker to my Commander Shepard. MJ Kuhn, how you doing, girl?
Hello. I am doing just as well as I was last week because it's been 5 minutes. How are you?
I'm good. I love how somber your voice was. But we got this, baby. Let's go. And also with us is Greta Kelly, the queen of my days, my bestie from the Midwesty. How are you?
Better than MJ, guys.
Better than MJ, clearly. Which is why you should go get MJ's book, Among Thieves, to support her journey to feeling better.
Buy me some Dayquil.
Buy me some Dayquil. So yeah, buy MJ's book and fund her Dayquil.
That sweet Dayquil money.
That's what every author strives for. Give me that Dayquil money.
I love it. Yeah, that's when you know you've made it. Well, if you'd like to help Adrian make it to Dayquil money next time he gets con crud, check out Much of the Blues, y'all.
And I'm here too, so get my books too.
Get Greta that Dayquil money. Get everyone that Dayquil money.
Give me that NyQuil money. Thank you very much.
Right, that's true. We got kids. We're not sleeping at night. Just put us to the night, please. As well, quick note for listeners, after this unhinged intro, you can support this mad shithouse on Patreon for a ton of cool extras like bonus episodes, author readings, and more. So check the links in the description to help us do what you do here. Also, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the FanFiAddict YouTube channel where this and every other episode of the show is available in full video. And now, joining us once again, perhaps unfortunately for him, the talented and ridiculously tall David Wragg, author of the Articles of Faith series, the Tales of Plain series, including his latest release, The Iron Road. Welcome back, good sir. How are you?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little better.
Better than MJ? That's like our spectrum now.
Yeah, we'll call it like a 6.5.
Okay, all right. MJ, what are you at?
6.75 max.
Okay.
I like it. We don't want to talk about where I'm at.
Oh my God.
She's being judged by the Russians today, so it's very low.
Is that a euphemism? Sorry.
We were talking about the Olympics earlier. Come on, man. Get with the program. MJ got a very low score. But a heads up, this is part 2 of our 2-part chat with Dave, so I recommend checking out part 1 to get to know him better. Today, though, it's publishing therapy hour as we resolve our trauma and talk about surviving the midlist. Before we dig deeper into the episode, a quick word from our sponsor. What happens when an infernal warrior longs to be a noble paladin, or a thunder mage solves problems with lightning and nudity, or a vampire kangaroo joins your crew? You get The Malevolent Eight, Sebastien de Castell's riotous dark fantasy sequel to the Malevolent Seven, where a gang of foul-mouthed wizards somehow end up saving the world. Kind of. It's got blood spells gone wrong, rat mages, infernal contracts, and enough chaos to torch the multiverse. All delivered with Sebastian's signature flair. Magic, mayhem, moral bankruptcy, just another day with the Malevolent Eight. Read it today before it burns everything down, including your bookshelf. The Malevolent Eight, now available in hardcover, wherever good and evil books are sold. And now, enjoy the rest of this episode of SFF Addicts. So to kick off this discussion, I feel like we kick around the word midlist an awful lot, and especially for listeners out there who are primarily readers, might not understand what that term means. So from your perspective, Dave, what does the midlist actually mean? And what does it mean to kind of be a midlist author?
Yeah, okay. So I think that the most important thing to understand with this is that you have lead titles, which are the ones that publishers will splash advertising over, will do hundreds of events, will send their authors on tours and all the rest of it. And then you have everything else. And that is midlist. There is no bottom list. There is no arse list. There is nothing below midlist. Midlist is a continuum that stretches off over an event horizon towards nothingness without ever actually reaching zero. Sorry, it's quite late here now, so we're reaching. we're getting towards that. Basically, midlist is everything that is not a lead title, and that can encompass an enormous range from books that you have heard of and seen in every bookshop you've been into, but don't necessarily receive quite the same amount of promotion, to books that you see absolutely nothing of and do not know exist, but are also published by the very same publishers, with the very same editors, with the very same publicity machine that is simply not turned on.
Well, and with that comes a natural discussion or natural transition into talking about the debut experience, because I feel like for many midlist authors, myself included,
Me too.
it is. It's kind of a heartbreaking experience when your dreams of like overnight success, right? You just sign this book deal, you're so excited, and you just start to have this like dream of what your life's going to be like now, and then it kind of withers and dies along with your marketing budget, right?
Mm.
Was that how it went for you or not? What were your expectations versus what was the reality in your debut experience?
So it absolutely fell short. I mean, I think there's no sort of dressing that up. I have learned a huge amount about publishing beforehand, but I was lucky enough to be on Twitter in the years when it was useful and to have followed authors, editors, agents, and people involved in publishing, to just picked up so much of an inside track on it that I just didn't know. I mean, I think I had my Twitter account something like 2011. It was about the time that I first decided I was going to try and write a book. So it took me years to actually accumulate an understanding of what publishing involved, how you submitted books, how you did this, how you did that. By the time I was signed to an agent, it was 2018, and we had the book deal probably within a couple of months. But it was just the one offer, and I knew that wasn't ideal because it meant we had no leverage, or as I believe you pronounce it, leverage. So I blame the French.
Us fancy North Americans.
Yeah.
Leverage.
With your little wax mustachios. So it was pretty obvious up front that only having one offer meant you were going to get bargain basement terms. Now, what I didn't know, and has since become something of a truism, is that the amount of money they spend on your advance is the amount of money they'll spend on marketing if you're lucky. So the books that attract enormous advances, they go to 15-way auction and are sold for 8-figure deals. They have thrown so much money at it already that they need it to be a success. So they are going to throw just as much again, so goes the theory at least, to ensure that it makes that money back. And the other thing to bear in mind is that long before you earn out, your publisher is making a profit on you. So long before, if your advance was $2,000 for 2 books, before you've even seen that $2,000 back in sales, they have made a profit on you. So their profit starts a lot earlier than yours does. Even with that in mind, the thing to remember about publishing is that A, it is profitable, and B, it is chronically understaffed. So there are simply not enough people to promote these books and to give them all the care and attention they deserve. However, in spite of that, many books are successful. So there is no direct correlation to the amount of money spent on marketing and a book's eventual success, especially seen in the long term. However, about the only factor that correlates with some degree of sales is marketing spend. But there are so many exceptions. There's, all the word of mouth. And ultimately, the publishing business model is what I believe is technically called the flinging shit at the wall model, which is that if you
or
buy
spaghetti if it's PG. But...
I mean, yeah, sure, shit spaghetti. If you have 15 books that are pretty good, that you like enough to buy, that you like enough to edit and publish, with any luck enough, other people out there will like them enough to buy them, and maybe one or two of them will take off and become serious sellers out of nowhere. And that's where you make the big bucks, because you've spent very little on the production of those books and you've made an absolute killing on sales. You have a biggerless, dickerless moment. You have someone wins a Hugo out of nowhere. Any number of things could happen. And suddenly this small time book, boom, hits the big time. But relying on that as the strategy for all of your midlist books, which, let's not forget, is everything that's not a lead title, where every publisher might have maybe one or two, or in the bigger cases, maybe 3 lead titles in a year, in a quarter. I don't know. I mean, they won't let me look at their internal files, but I've got a hunch.
So
everything else is rolling the dice, and the dice are not loaded in your favor.
Yeah.
And you were lucky enough to sign with a larger publisher. You kind of, would be forgiven to mistake that you would have the backing of said larger publisher. At what point did you realize, in your own experience, that you were kind of going to have to take the reins on this whole marketing thing on your own, and, realizing that it was up to you to kind of hustle for yourself?
Yeah. I think that the term that gets used for this sort of thing is creeping dread, where you first become aware of the possibility, when it hadn't really crossed your mind before, that essentially that you are not the favored child. And then having suddenly become aware of it's a possibility, you're then sort of hypersensitive to evidence to that extent. And I think for me, it was the cover of the book just being uploaded to Amazon as a kind of, it's up there you go. And a friend of mine messaging going, I see your book cover's up on Amazon. And being like, oh, are we not doing a kind of cover reveal thing? Because I've seen you doing that with lots of others. Are we not emailing my editor and going, does that mean we're doing are we there? And just getting quite a sort of a brusque, like, oh no, we don't do that with all books. And I'm beginning to get the impression that mine is not all books. And after that, you're becoming acutely conscious of what's happening for some books and what's not happening for yours. And also the things, again, it's the stuff that it's not being done through malice or negligence. It's that there simply are not enough people to do a thorough job on everything. And so they have to prioritize. And unfortunately, the books that have commanded those advances, the books on which the sort of financial health of the imprint or even the publisher rely, are going to be the ones that take precedence. And that you have to then start to acquire a degree of stoicism or a sort of philosophical aspect about like where you are in that chain, and remembering how far you've come versus how far you're falling short of what's disappearing. I mean, if you want to laugh, my original hope was that when I signed the deal in 2018, I knew that my first book would be out in 2019. So I thought, well, we can hit one book a year for 5 years. maybe I could become a full-time writer by that futuristic year of 2024. Well, as I finished up work earlier today, I had cause to think back on that and go, lol. Yes, sweet summer child. No,
Sweet summer child.
Not even close.
Oh yeah, but it's. I mean, the short-staffed element to it is something that I think a lot of people outside of the industry don't realize, and even amongst a lot of authors, like that's not something that you just figure out on your own, especially not for unpublished authors. And all these years later, it's kind of like I'm sure you've figured out some efforts that you have to put in yourself, that your publisher on paper technically would like to help you with, or whatever, like marketing stuff and certain kinds of expenses. I know a lot of authors who have publicists who are freelance publicists who they've hired separate of their publisher and their publishing contract, right? So how have you decided?
Yeah.
How do you decide?
Well, this is the trap, if you like.
Are worth it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The trap here, because when you're traditionally published, or traditionally punished, as I once said in a totally Freudian manner, your royalty rates are 8% on paperback, 15% on ebook, maybe 25% on audio. But compared to self-publishing, they are very small. And in return for that low royalty rate, you get a professionally published and distributed book, which is not nothing. Just to the possibility of your book being in a bookshop, being in libraries, it's a massive hurdle to overcome for anyone who's doing this from an indie perspective. But it also means if you engage in an activity, whatever it is, competitive dogging or otherwise, and it sells 10 books, then you are going to make, if they're paperback, 8% of that or whatever it is. Whereas if you're an indie and you sell 10 books, you are making maybe 70% of the cost of that, which means the cost of that activity, whether it's, engaging a freelance marketer, whether it is, taking yourself across countries to go to conventions, to do events, all that kind of thing, the amount of money you make on every sale is a fraction of what someone who is self-published or, doing things in an indie way will make, which means that your efforts don't go as far, bluntly. Like if you're going to spend 15 grand on engaging a marketing consultant, or you're going to spend ultimately your time, and this is what it comes down to. It's your time on making marketing assets that your publisher's not making for you, on spending, sending plaintive emails to reviewers and bloggers and just saying, please read my book. And the postage for packaging things up and sending them out yourself. Even if you start selling the books yourself, you get author copies. They'll give you like 20 paperbacks. I could flog those paperbacks if I like, make a killing. But all of these things, like pushing the needle by a few copies here, a few copies there, a few copies there, you're just not going to make it back. Fundamentally, you cannot do it as a way of selling copies in a way that, and I guess an indie author needs to, because ultimately, when you're an indie, you are starting at absolute zero and you have to push yourself out there. And so anything that sells copies is worth looking at from a cost benefit perspective. When you're traditionally published, you're already at sort of 100. It's just this scale goes up to 4.5 million. So, you're massively in compared with someone who's at zero. But to get up there, you're not going to be able to do it yourself. The publishers have the machinery to shift thousands of copies of books if they choose to engage it, but it still costs them time and it costs them resources, and those resources are strictly finite. And unless you can somehow make them feel that your book is worth pushing over other books, and I know we always say that like other authors are not our competitor, they are our community, and that is absolutely the case. But when it comes to publishers, they have a limited number of staff with a limited number of time. They have a limited, strictly limited budgets. If you're already a bestseller and they know that your next book is good for 1 million copies, as long as 1 million people know it exists, they will spend the money to broadcast the existence of that book to 1 million people. If it's a debut, they have spent God knows how much on. and they are convinced that like this one is going to set TikTok alight, they will spend the money. But if you're just some person writing a book that is really pretty good, but it's not quite what the market's into right now, it's not really in their interest to spend all their resources on it, or even some of their resources when they can divert them all into the stuff that they think is going to sell. Now, of course, it doesn't work like that because everything is unpredictable. There are books that have had millions of dollars spent on their marketing and have absolutely flopped. Likewise, there are books that had nothing and did really well. However, again, the correlation trends towards the ones that get the money tend to do a little better. So in some ways, you can't do it yourself. If you are midlist, then we're back to that sort of slightly stoic angle of you've got to find the stuff that you enjoy. Because doing stuff that you hate day in, day out to try to shift a needle, which ultimately will benefit your publishers far more than it benefits you, isn't a very healthy way to live. And most of us who went the traditional publishing route did it because we wanted to write, not market. You know, the big difference, like anyone can sit down and say, I'm going to write a book. It's not that hard. Take it from me. It turns out it's really easy, very straightforward. I would encourage everyone listening to this podcast just to pause it now, go away, write your book, come back, and then
come back in an hour.
Yeah, see, that wasn't so hard, was it? There you go. Congratulations, you've written your book. Now what? And that's the problem. Like, what are you going to do with it? So, if you enjoyed the experience of getting those god awful words onto the god awful page, good for you. If you, on the other hand, enjoy, say, I don't know, making little like cupcakes with book covers on them and taking them into bookshops and giving them to people and, you know, making little sort of like all of these things I know people do in the furtherance of their books. Like, if you enjoy that, if it's something that you don't mind spending your time and energies on, like sending those plaintive emails, begging bloggers to look at your book, making TikTok content, making YouTube content, just producing content, good for you. And do it as much as you can take. And maybe it'll help. But fundamentally, a lot of us are slightly sort of ASD spectrum introverts who don't enjoy going outside, being around other people, especially people we don't know or don't like or smell weird. So we don't really want to do anything other than just stay in our little isolation cubicles with that lingering smell of diaper.
Just a nod to some off-air shenanigans.
Don't worry, Adrian has changed the offending item now, so we're good to go.
We're good.
But most of us just want to be left alone in our little cubes with our made-up worlds and our made-up friends, just writing stuff down and going kee. And if your book is good enough to publish, then surely that's all it should be, right? So when it comes to the subject of this, you know, so-called master, so-called class, surviving the midlist, it has to be something that is an inward activity rather than an outward activity. Because if you are a midlist author, maybe, just maybe, you will hit the big time, that bolt of lightning will strike, maybe some reviewer will stumble across your book, or there'll be some, you know, gushing TikToker who goes, I found this at a yard sale, it was on fire and I put the flames out and then it was the best thing I've ever read and now you must buy it. But you can't rely on that. And you can't rely on a publisher who, if your first book doesn't hit the stratosphere, is going to put you under a certain heading in their spreadsheets of like,
Yeah. Well, I love that idea of looking inward because I feel like, you know, I think it's a very purposeful titling of surviving the midlist, not necessarily breaking out of the midlist, right? Because like maybe eventually, hopefully, like you said, we'll get something that catches fire. But I think for just my personal experience, the biggest point of growth has been when I stopped feeling bitter and frustrated and whatever about the situation and just started going, man, I came here to write books. So I'm just going to keep writing books and doing what I love. But one of the other really important pieces that I think has pulled me out of the mires of bitterness has been community. And the community here, the writing community, the SFF community, is just absolutely so incredible. We talk a lot on this show about the importance of community.
And we just got back from Worldcon.
We just got back from Worldcon.
Which is like an overdose of community.
Oh my God. Yeah, I was so in the community that it gave me germs. But I think for midlisters, community can be particularly important, partially for the social support we were talking about earlier, of going like, oh my God, other people do struggle with the same thing. But also just we're often tasked with getting our own blurbs and endorsements and, just straight up knowing other people that write and read what we write and read is important. So what has been your experience and what is your advice for building really genuine relationships with other authors? Like how I was trying to phrase this is like relationships that don't feel transactional, even like they are networking relationships too.
Yeah. I mean, it is a tricky one because I think everyone benefits from exposure to other people who are in a similar position, but we also benefit from people who are in subtly different gradations. And so I would say group chats, fundamentally group chats are probably the best coping tool. So rather than being out under the kind of the public glare of social media interactions and all the rest of it, and the kind of hey, how you doing? New book, yeah, cool, love your last one, yeah, and it's all kind of just excruciatingly public, and like, well, we're just two guys chatting here, but also everyone can see what we're saying. It's way better, I think, to be on. And I mean that some fellow clients of my agent set up a Discord server, I don't know, a couple of years back now. And that has been, I think, I mean, if you'd asked me beforehand, are you in? Like, yeah, sure, whatever. And now I think it is like a fairly foundational aspect of keeping some fairly optimal mental health. They're just having a group of people who, anytime there's any kind of publishing shit blows up, you can just go, oh, they did it again, and have a group of people who know exactly what you're going through, who've been through it themselves, or are close enough to it to understand what it means, in a way that people outside the process and outside the industry who are still looking up at you going, oh my God, you got a book published. You see, you're a rich author now, or whatever else. Even those closest to us, you're there going like, didn't book the audio narrator again, and they're like, that's nice, dear, okay. But for those of you who are in in the trenches, he said, not overstating the importance of this stuff at all, having people who get it and having people who understand what it means is enormously important. So yeah, 100% community. And in terms of, how do you stop things being transactional? Like, it's entirely within your gift as a human being to treat people as people instead of like coin-operated machines, which, you put favors into and get favors out of. And some of that is just down to how you deal with people, how you are with people. There are always, I think, there's the danger of sort of not so much power imbalance as opportunity imbalance. One of the nice things about having a natural grouping, like say all clients of the same agent, is that is, again, a spectrum. There are some people who are still on submission for their first novel. There are people who've hit the bestseller lists like 5 times in a row. And there's everyone in between. There are people who've been riding high and are now, having a tough time. There are people who had a tough time for a long time and are now on the top of things. So that sort of a group of people with varied experience, both current and previous, but also who can be supportive in a sort of private way without it needing to be very public. Again, declarations made on social media or anywhere else, like, recording tearful TikTok videos where we declare our undying love for each other. Like, obviously we'll be doing that anyway, but that's just for me and Adrian.
Yeah. Sorry, Greta. Sorry, MJ. I'm gonna take a glass of water. Soak that all
so
in.
That's, you've got to be looking at what is in your control and what isn't. And I'm afraid the former list is very, very short, and the latter list is just everything else. And what is in your control is the writing. And everything else, does your book get, even like queried successfully, do you get an agent? Like completely out of your control. You could write the best, most perfect book in the world. It could go to the most perfect agent, and they could go, shit, I got a book like this just last week from someone, and I've signed them, and I can't
that happened
sign.
to me. Yeah.
We're
literally, it was like, I'm sorry, but it's a conflict because one of my clients right now is subbing a book that is a police procedural fantasy with a child murder, and I'm like, well, fuck, that is like too coincidental. So
and you can end up in a situation where it's like, well, I've just sent this book out. I cannot send your book out at the same time. I could take you on and sit on this for 6 months, 9 months, a year, and then send it out. Is that what you want? Like, what's your goal in getting an agent? But everything is it's the constantly shifting landscape, and it's always gateways and milestones. Can you get an agent? Once you've got an agent, can you get a book on submission? Once you've got a book on submission, can you get one offer, let alone multiple offers? Once you've got offers, can you actually find a contract you agree with? Have they put a load of AI shit in there? Who knows? And then, what's the deal for 1 book, 2 books, 3 books? And then things keep changing. The sad thing about the midlist is that in many ways it no longer really exists. The midlist that we have today is a kind of lingering artifact of what came before. I would say even 15 years ago, it was perfectly possible to just keep writing books and keep being published that didn't have an enormous readership, but had a fairly passionate or committed readership. And suddenly you would find people, their 3rd series hit the big time, their 4th series hit the big time. The 12th book by this person was suddenly the one everyone was talking about, and they all flooded back. It was like, the earlier stuff was a bit rough around the edges, but you could see it coming, and then really hit their stride. I mean, Game of Thrones was not George Martin's first book by a long stretch of the imagination. Unfortunately, and this is not just publishing now, we're seeing it with so many other things. It is hits or death where we are, for our media, for our content now. I mean, look, streaming TV being the awful example, we are hollowing out the pipeline that allows people to learn on the job. Because, you make a hit show, great. Or you make a hit show and it flops, and so it gets cancelled. Or you make a show and it was good, but it wasn't good enough to make it on the series, and so everyone gets disbanded. You can't keep a crew together long enough to learn how to make great television. I mean, I think the number of classic TV shows where you would say, the first series is a bit ropey, 2nd series hit its stride, 3rd series, my God, stellar stuff, and you've got 4 series of absolute top-class stuff. And that can't be done now in the age of streaming. And similarly, with publishing, there is no appetite for stuff that's just kind of fine.
So I look at something like The Expanse, and it's like that show was really good from the get-go, but it was like canceled after I think 3 or 4 seasons, and then Amazon came in and basically salvaged it, and then that team was able to really commit to it and create 3 more seasons that were absolutely fantastic. But it's like, if you don't give people the opportunity to grow into their role and develop their skills, then it's like, you look at someone like Martha Wells as well. It's like she didn't really have success until Murderbot, and then people started reading her backlog, and we've talked to her before, and she said she almost quit. It's like she was in the midlist and she almost just completely called it quits.
This is sadly, this is where we end up now, is the point of like, why do you write? Why do we write? Well, why does anyone write? For God's sake, why are you doing it? But the big question is what you're doing making you happy? And it has to be, and it shouldn't just be like, well, I have to write, it's too easy just to go straight to that sort of, not quite the starving artist, but they're like, I must write. It is in my soul. If I do not write, I'm a caged spirit. I will simply decompress. Like, well, again, is it making you happy? Is the way, because once you make your peace with the notion that there is no sort of escalator anymore. There is only the work. There is the work that you can do. You can write. You can write more stuff. You can keep going, or you can choose to stop, or you can take breaks and you can come back, whatever else. But anything you write has no guarantee of publication. And once you can make peace with that, then you have to ask yourself the tough questions of, well, do I want to keep going? Why am I doing this? Because ultimately writing takes, and this might be news to you, but it takes a very long time. I mean, again, if you've finished your first book earlier, pause the podcast now, go away, write your second book, come back. I mean, that took a while, right? So all that time you are spending writing, and I know my advice in the previous episode is you're also thinking about it. That counts. All the time you're thinking about it, all the time you are hunched over the keyboard, furiously mashing the keys with the little grubby jam fists. That is time you are not spending doing anything else. It means sacrifice. Now, maybe it is, you're sacrificing paying work. Maybe you're just sacrificing the TV show you wanted to watch, or spending time with your friends or significant others or your children. But fundamentally, you are not doing something you would otherwise have been done. And so the big question is it worth it? Is what you're doing worth it for the sense that you get when you finish a project, when you put something together and you think, if nobody else ever reads this, other than perhaps my friends, can I still be proud of it? Do I still think it was worth it? Do I want to keep doing this? And these are fundamental questions, and you shouldn't just be going to the instinctive sort of, hip shot, like, oh, yeah, of course, every time. Because the reality is, none of us is likely to make it big. None of us is likely to become full-time unless we are incredibly lucky and the stars align in our favor. Even if we write the best books we ever have done, which, I have done now twice. I'm very, very proud of the work that I've done. I'm very proud of the books that I've published. And I'm infuriated that I have also written other books which are just as good, if not better. And I have many, many more books that I wish to also publish, which I think will be great if I ever get around to writing them. But I also have to be realistic in that possibly no one will ever read them. Or, a small enough number. And is that enough for me? And I have decided that it is. And that's really what it comes down to. I have decided that the sacrifices that I make in my life to carve out the time required to read and write, believe it or not, to produce work that I am proud of and that may never actually be available in published form, but, maybe I'll release it on indie. I'm not a natural self-promoter, believe it or not. So it's possible, I'll upload a thing to Amazon and I'll send an email to a few people and be like, yep, good, that's done. And that is the summation of my self-publishing experience. We shall see. Obviously, I would prefer it if everything that I wrote was picked up by a big publisher and, there was a parade every time. And then they put me on television and they said, just, why is your book so good? How do you do it? And I go, well, it comes naturally, doesn't it? Like, I just have to write, it's in my soul. It just pours out of me. I bleed onto the page. And it's like, no, I thought it'd be funny. I wanted to write a book about a guy who was shit at fighting, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
I love that, of making sure that you know where your goalpost is and you're doing it for X reward. Because I think a danger that I see a lot of folks get into, and anytime I one of my friends signs their first book deal now, right, like a new debut, there's two things that I always tell them, and it kind of feels like you were kind of getting at the heart of this, so I want your take on it. Which one of those is beware the shifting goalposts, because they're always going to move. But two is write yourself a letter right now, before the book comes out, about what your dream is, right? Because if I had written myself that letter, I didn't do it. I heard of someone that did, and I was like, damn, I should have did that.
It's like setting up your expectations.
That's the thing. Because if
Yeah.
all I wanted was to have my book on the shelf of a Barnes and Noble, that was my dream since I was a kid. And I got that. And then by the time I got there, I was disappointed because the goalposts had shifted. So, I think, would it be true to say that instead of looking for success, the barometer of that being hitting a bestseller list or getting a major award or something, the barometer for success should just be that feeling that you chase for when you finish a book you're proud of? Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah. And then ultimately, it's quite difficult to know when you've finished a book, isn't it? Because you get to the end of the first draft, but my first, I finished the first draft earlier this year, and my immediate thought was bang, right, draft 2. Just go back to the beginning. I've got a whole list of things I know I need to fix. There was no kind of take the rest of the day off, celebrate, go out on the town. But no, I know there's a long list of shit that needs fixing with it. And then by the time I'd got through that list, it was okay, well, some of it's still not right. And I go back and then I need to have a read through. And there's just a gradual tailing off where you were looking for that one moment, that one bit in the film of your life where the end, bang, and they sit back, yay, pop open the champagne.
Pop open a bottle of writer's tears. And just
exactly. But that notion of I finished the book. Did you? Or are you going to go in and start tinkering with it again? And I'm well, I've sent it to the editor now. Oof. You're yeah, you must be so excited. No, because they're going to come back and they're going to say, duh. And it just, that incredible atomic sense of closure of an act completed is very difficult to find. And one of the great things about publishing, and there's a little asterisk next to great, you can see it if you squint, is the timeline stretch. And that sense, like you said, MJ, of all you wanted when you were back here was to see a book on a shelf with your name on it. And yet, by the time it arrives, you're standing there going, one book, face in this shop and not in any of those other ones. I had to drive 4 hours to come and see this thing. And it's just, no one's going to see that. Who's going to buy that? Fuck's sake. How was the feeling of seeing your book on the shelf, darling? Rubbish. So it's never how you expect it to be. And there's also that the time lag of you hearing something, you finding out something, you being told something, I've signed a deal, I've had an agent being interested, I had that, and then you're you can't tell anyone. And we're going to wait, 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 and now we can announce. And you're oh shit, now is it? Oh God. Great news, I've done a thing. And you've known about it for 9 months. And now everyone else goes yay, congratulations. You're yeah, whatever, I've got a whole lot of other stuff on. And I get
So
you're
relatable,
robbed of that. Yeah.
But
I mean, some of the authors we interview are just man, I finished this book so long ago, I don't even remember what the fuck it's about.
Yeah.
I've written 2 books since The Iron Road. I mean, they're both very short. They are 2 books that were half the length. But since I sent that manuscript in, even with pre-copy edits, I've written 2 other entirely different books, and I am working on a third that my head is now full of that. Yeah. And so the whole the new book, it's coming out, next month. What's it about? I don't remember.
It's so true, though. And I love what you say about time stretching, because as traditionally published authors, time never stretches so acutely as when you're on submission with a new book. So based on your experience and stories that you've heard from other authors, how does this midlister status idea affect a new publisher's perception of you when you're on submission? And how do you deal with the possibility of this book that you worked on a year ago now, 2 years ago, maybe? How does the possibility of that book dying on sub? How do you face that?
It's a bleak answer, ultimately, in that it's completely out of your hands. Being a midlister with an unimpressive sales record certainly doesn't help. And one thing that has been, again, it's another one of these things that happens slowly, the gradual realization that the sales, because again, when you're traditionally published, you're not hearing sales figures. You're getting a royalty statement or an unroyalty statement every 6 months, if you're lucky. and you're seeing numbers on there, and then you're going back and comparing them to, and going like, oh, that isn't good. And the general sense of sort of things are not happening the way you wanted them to. And then the knock-on that follows of when you deliver all of the books that you're under contract for, you will have to essentially start again from scratch. But in some ways, it is worse than scratch. Because when you're a debut, anything is possible. When you're a debut, you are a fresh roll of the dice. You are like uncharted territory, which is why, again, you see so many people starting in with pseudonyms, hopping genres. You will see books described as, so-and-so author's fantasy debut. And you're like, didn't they already write 16 sci-fi books? And I'm like, no, we have to put the word debut in there. And they haven't done this particular kind of fantasy before, so shh. We love a debut because it has the potential. Unfortunately, when you have a sales record and that sales record isn't sparkly, it can only really weigh you down. And the difference, I think, between the end of my first series and the end of my second series is that before we'd even finished the second book, we're still in edits for the second book, I was getting questions from the editors like, hey, what's next? Well, we were thinking this. Can we have more books? Can we do this? Can we do that? Let's talk about it. And there was already that interest. And I was very much acutely aware for the second series, there were no inquiries. No one was going, hey, what are you doing? What's happening? Da-da. So what's cooking? It was a kind of, yeah, okay, thanks. So I have known for a long time that I would need to go on submission again. It has been acutely obvious for a while. And I have known for a long time that although I can say my first series had very solid sales, second series is not. And I don't know why. I have a number of theories, but we are looking at possibly 10% of the first series, based just purely on number of ratings on Amazon or Goodreads. And as far as I'm concerned, the books are better. They're certainly better structured. The second book of the new series, I think, is stellar, and it should win awards. I don't know what for, but it should definitely win them. The third book, I think, is also really, really good. It's an incredible closer to a series that I'm immensely proud of. So I don't think it's from a decline in quality. So that only really leaves every other possibility. And the fact is that I will never know, because there isn't really any sort of hard data on any of this stuff. And ultimately, you'd have to sit people down and say, why didn't you buy that book? Only for them to go, what book? I never heard of it, which again is half the problem. So with all of that in my own head, knowing that any submission I make to another publisher starts with, who's that guy? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, let's have a look anyway.
Yeah, but there's always this like comparison game, right? There's like this literal number that they can use to determine so many different things, right? And it's like you explaining the transition from series 1 to series 2. It's kind of like, I'd never heard of this before, entering into like this industry and interviewing authors and stuff, but the midlist death spiral kind of thing, which my friend Ronnie Verdi told me about. But you explaining like the comparison between series 1 and series 2, and there's so many inexplicable factors going on there, but a lot of authors get stuck in this midlist death spiral. If you can kind of like explain to listeners what that is, and if there's any escape from it, or like if self-pub and hybrid is kind of like a bit of an option.
So I mean, the midlist death spiral is basically just the term of art for declining sales year on year, book on book. With a series, you always expect sales to drop between book 1 to book 2, book 2. I mean, and it varies. It can be sort of, they drop by half, they drop by 2/3. And then again, it's always it's the biggest drop off is between book 1 and book 2, because lots of people will buy book 1 of a series, get to the end and go, yeah, it's all right, but they won't pick up book 2. I mean, I am incredibly guilty of that. Behind me on the shelves are a shitload of book 1s, not so many book 2s. But once you have bought book 2, you're invested in the series, and you'll probably buy book 3, And maybe, I mean, in historical terms, series that went on for longer than that, sort of book 4, book 5 or 6, there aren't so many of that kind of series anymore. And I think in many ways, the Midlist Death Spiral it's going the way of the Midlist, in that it has spiraled for a lot of us now, to the extent that you are dropping out to there is no real Midlist, or that I don't think there will be a Midlist in a couple of years' time. There's going to be debuts, there's going to be mega sellers, and there's going to be the smaller publishers. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult to move up from that. Not impossible. I think it is still out there for people. It'll generally, I think, be standalones, where someone just writes a spectacular book that is absolutely right for the moment, and they put it out on submission. And even though, they did 2 series with so-and-so, and they did another sort of duology with them, and it didn't do very well, but, it was a good book. And then they write something that's absolutely banging, and suddenly the big publishers are interested again, and it becomes a lead title. Like, I think that can absolutely happen. But relying on that to happen, it's not really a viable strategy. Again, not for good mental health, which is fundamentally what this is about, because everything external to you, you cannot control it. And you have to make peace with that. All you can do is be proud of the work that you do and keep doing it, and make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. So can you escape the Midlist Death Spiral? Potentially. Self-pub is a route. Hybrid is just self-pub when you've still got the hangover of a contract, right? I mean, that's it.
But contractual hangover, I love that.
Yeah. But the books that I'm looking at the moment, so the book that is currently on sub, I love that book. I've been wanting to write that book since 2018, and it's out there now. Will anyone buy it? Maybe. I think it's great. But it is book 1 of a series that I intend to write 6 books in. And that is something I will be doing for me. Now, if anyone wants to buy those books, yay! But if they go, I'm sorry, what? No. Again, fine. Not unreasonable. Because the first question that they're always going to ask on every submission is, can we sell this? And then, can we sell this for buckets? Like, can we sell this everywhere? Which is why, again, crossover fiction is so huge. The notion of like, people who don't read fantasy can read this. Because it's got a little bit of fantasy.
Dungeon Crawler Carl has so much like cross-market appeal, right? And they can just market the shit out of that to so many different age groups and like people with different interests and whatnot.
Yeah. Whereas we always say you've got to write the stuff you want to write. You've got to write the stuff that matters to you, that you love. And again, that first thing I tried to write, it wasn't for me. I was trying to write for the wrong age group. I was trying to write the kind of book that I probably wouldn't have read myself. And it was a slog, and it was bad, and it taught me a huge amount about writing. But at no point did I think, this is the one to submit to people. Now I am writing the stuff that I want to do in a way I want to do it. And that is going to bump me up against, but we can't sell this. What genre is this? Who's this appeal to fans of? Who are your comp titles? All the rest of it. Like, I don't really know. I've written this because I want to write this. And once it is written, it'll be done, and I can move on with my life. But fundamentally, if nobody wants to pick it up and publish it, then I will self-publish it, because this stuff I think is good enough for anyone to be able to read it if they want to. If they want to, sling me $1.99 or whatever it is, good. But I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. And to be honest, when you write 70,000 word thrillers, you can absolutely smash them out there so fast. So 6 of those, they'll be done in no time at all. And then I can move on. And that is pretty much my plan. So from that perspective, if anything gets picked up on submission, yay. If this next book I write that's Fantasy Palette Cleanser gets picked up, which it should, because it's going to be amazing. But who knows? If not, we'll look at other things. But I'm not in the business of writing books that try to hit a moving market that will probably have moved on by the time I get there. I'm not aiming for age groups and interest ranges that aren't mine. And I don't want to spend time on work that feels hollow. So this is my plan. who knows? Maybe I'll come back on in 3 years and you'll be like, hey, Dave, 3 years ago, you were like, and how did that work out for you, eh? Fuckstick. So,
We'll say it just like that too.
Yeah. I mean, I've got it recorded, so
Yeah.
I'll know. to call
as you should.
fuckstick.
Putting it in the
Well, no,
calendar now.
Love it. Well, as
Fuckstick
we're
day,
kind
yeah.
of winding down here, I know we wanted to prevent this episode from being like too doom and gloom, which I really do feel like we have. I feel like there's been a lot of
We
like
found a nice balance.
there's been a nice balance.
Yeah.
But I want to close this out on like a fully positive note because I do think that, you know, as we've discussed, the midlist is kind of the majority of the publishing world. So, you know, how do you view your role in the publishing world? Like, what unique value can be found in midlist titles? That why are they incredible? You know what I mean? Why do we deserve to exist, Dave?
I think
Existential questions, MJ.
again, well, I think we go for the sort of, again, the hip shot answer of basically because it takes a lot less time to read a book than it does to write a book. And readers love books. Like they deserve books. So even if you're not writing the New York Times bestseller, even if you're not writing the stuff that is going to sweep the Nebulas or the Hugos or any of those other made up awards that aren't real, then it doesn't mean it isn't good. And it doesn't mean it won't actually be the best book that has ever hit the mark for one particular person out there who just goes, oh my God, this is catnip. This has hit me straight in the brain zone. I didn't know that there was a book out there that was quite so perfect for me. Because, you know, we're all weird and wonderful, strange creatures with our own little twisted brain chemistry. But ever so often we overlap enough with a few other people that they can go, this really spoke to me and I loved it and I want more. And that's what we're here to do.
We're very appreciative to all the midlisters out there. We love you. You're
Midlist
amazing.
represent.
Keep it going. Yeah, midlist represent.
Let's represent.
Keep it going. And that is a beautiful note to end on, my friend. And that's it for this writing masterclass, our two-parter with Dave. Brother, thank you so much for healing with us. I feel like this was a necessary healing for so many authors out there. And if you're getting into the publishing world, I hope this provides a bit of clarity, honestly, because there's now more than ever, there are more resources for authors to access and get a better, more comprehensive outlook on like what it means to be an author, like some of the things that you can expect, pitfalls, challenges, all that kind of stuff. You know, our friends over at Publishing Rodeo, Sunny and Scott, like so many different podcasts that are being like much more open and honest about an industry that has, for too long, I think, has been very opaque. Yeah. MJ,
Jinx.
we're on the same line. Yeah. So anyways, Dave, thank you for sharing your knowledge and providing a little bit of insight for everyone listening out there. Thank you, buddy.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to coming back in 3 years for Fuckstick Day.
Yeah, Fuckstick Day. I'm gonna mark it in my calendar. Just
Right,
like
August 22nd.
August 2028, Fuckstick Day. Let's go.
It's gonna come up and you're gonna be like, what the fuck?
No, I'm just gonna write Dave Fuckstick Day, and that'll be it. And if you contribute $5 or more to our Patreon, you can access an exclusive reading by Dave from his new novel, The Iron Road. Go check that out. Go support Dave's work. Get him out of the midlist. Buy a bunch of fucking copies, you know? If you're one person, just like buy 1,000.
15,000 each, please.
Yeah, exactly. Just bring all that money to Barnes & Noble. Just plop a coin bag. Dave, where can folks find you online?
DaveWragg.com is both my website and my Blue Sky username. Please come and find me there. You can send me messages. I might even not ignore them.
Fingers crossed. And he's got a newsletter that he may or may not put out once a year.
Yeah.
So look forward
if you're
to
lucky.
if you're lucky. And you can find SFF Addicts across the board at SFF Addicts Pod. You can find me at Adrian M. Gibson. You can check out Mushroom Blues wherever fine books are sold. If you want some more mushies in your life, MJ, what about you?
Yeah, you can find me on mostly Instagram at MJ Kuhn Books, or just my website, mjkuhn.com, for all my stuff. And you can buy my books. And Greta, where you at, girl?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram as well, but a little bit on TikTok and Twitter at Greta K. Kelly. And you can get my books wherever books are sold. But what the hell, we're talking debuts. Go check out The Frozen Crown. It's kind of like
So good, you guys. It's so good.
MJ, I told you not to talk in the mic like that anymore. Don't do it. Fuck you, MJ. I love you.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's kind of like if the princess from The Princess Bride was secretly a necromancer. So go check it out, or she's going to come get you.
There you go. Yeah, she's going to haunt you in your dreams like Dave haunts politicians. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We appreciate y'all. That's it for this episode, and we'll see you next week. For now, keep reading, keep imagining, and we'll see you next time on SFF Addicts.